Hey, welcome back to Living Life Between Sundays here on Refuge TV. My name is Pastor Benji Wham. I'm the lead pastor here at the Refuge Church, Murrells Inlet campus in beautiful Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, where things are heating up. It's getting closer to summertime. That means tourist time around here. But wherever you are today, we welcome you. Thank you for tuning in to Living Life Between Sundays, where Living Life Between Sundays is the Christian life is not just an event. It's not just a day. It's about living life between Sundays. And I am truly honored today. I've got somebody with me. I love to tell the story. I met him back in 2016. I think this church had been going about a week.
Yeah.
And we needed a sound guy. And we were at our mother church, and he was working an event there, and somebody connected me with him. And the deal was he was supposed to be here for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, about 3 weeks to train your staff.
And here we are, 6-7 years later, and he's still here.
Yeah, something about Benji. I guess he kind of rubbed off on me.
And that and the fact that, we threaten your life if you left. But
that and you feed me well.
Yeah, we do. we eat very good around here. But yeah, it's been an honor. And, you're not just our technical director here at this campus, but man, you've become one of my best friends, and I'm honored to know you and appreciate you being on the show with us today.
Very excited about it. Thank you.
Yeah, this is going to be a good day. And Dennis, just take a few minutes, because there's probably somebody out there, they don't know anything about Dennis Hubble. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll get into your military background in a minute, but maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and, maybe some interesting stuff people that don't know.
Okay. Well, my name's Dennis Hubble, and I am a wonderful child of God. And very blessed with that. I think I started young. Everybody's got that imaginary friend. Go big or go home. My imaginary friend was God.
Yeah.
So was brought up that way as a child.
Boy, we could really go with something there.
Yeah,
we'll leave it right there. That's good, though.
Yeah, but, always just a little different as a kid, I guess. And wasn't always as faithful as I needed to be. Obviously, as an adolescent, when I got into my teens and into my college years, kind of was a little backslidden, but it was great once I got a little older and into my military side of things. Got snatched up by a church and redirected back to where I was supposed to be, and kind of the rest is history from there. So. Wow.
One thing that I find interesting, people that know me, I'm a college football guy, so I got to go there. You played, a lot of people don't know this, you played a little college football on the FBS, or at that time it's called D1.
Yeah, it's called D1 they're now the Miami Redhawks, but it was the Miami Redskins, Miami of Ohio. And I ended up graduating from the University of Cincinnati.
Go Bearcats.
So I'm a huge Bearcats fan as well.
And also a huge fan of Skyline Chili. But that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
there.
some Skyline Chili. Yes, sir.
Man. And that's kind of part of how God connected our hearts there.
Yes, sir. And not just your hearts, but your stomachs.
That's right. That's right. And, of course, Dennis, you have an entertainment company, and you've done really well with that as
Thank you.
a DJ. In fact, you just were recognized by a publication.
Yeah, I've won a number of them in town, but most recently the Carolina Forest Chronicle through myorinews.com. Best wedding DJ on the Grand Strand, and I just got nominated again. They're the North Strand News. So voting is on right now, so you can vote through the end of the month.
There we go. I'm trying to think, will this air in May? Yes, this will. This is actually our Memorial Day weekend episode.
Yes, our last push.
So, well, let's get them over the top, folks. All right. So, So again, military weekend. I want to talk today about your time in the service.
Okay.
Man, first of all, thank you for your service and all you did have done for our country, and again, just knowing you. I've actually had a chance to sit down for breakfast with some of your pals that have served, and a very colorful conversation.
Yes, they are.
but anyway, and I enjoyed that. But I guess what I'm getting at is that you have a heart for our country. You have a heart for the military. You're very passionate about that. So maybe. First of all, just kind of let everybody know what branch you served, what your rank was, and maybe some of what you did, or that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I've been in my entire career was in the Army, and started out as an enlisted soldier, and started out in the reserves, and then a series of things happened, and I ended up becoming an officer. Started out in the Signal Corps, repairing stuff in a maintenance shop, electronics, and then ended up becoming a helicopter pilot and jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. So,
which is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's just so fascinating.
Yeah. I've had a wonderful military career, but it's like anything, you get out of it what you put into it, and had some amazing opportunities, have done and seen things that most people never experience in their lifetime. And, for me, everybody gets in for different reasons. Some people it's the GI Bill. Some people it's, they get forced to. Hey, it's either you go to jail or you go into the military. And for me, it was a little different. It was the duty, honor, and country thing.
Wow.
And, the whole process, I think your decision making is a little different when you go in with that kind of approach, and it really is an entirely different experience for people that have never been in the military. When you have a group of people that are working together for a solution, because sometimes your life is on the line, and you need to be able to trust the guy next to you to have your back, and those kind of things just don't happen in the civilian world. So it's a wonderful experience. Some of the most painful experiences that I've ever had, pushing you to your limits, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little later in the discussion, because some of the stuff, it's like you learn a lot about yourself and what your limits are. And frequently we limit ourselves. It's in our heads. And when you're pushed and you are pushed and you look back and you go, wow, we accomplished that.
Well, I think too, it goes back to what we talk about a lot around here, is the treasure is in the dirt.
Yes,
and until you really dig, you really don't know what you're capable of. And I think that's one thing I am learning. I've been recently studying kind of about the purpose and the potential that God has placed in us. And most people they live life never really understanding what God really put in them and what they could have reached to. So I guess with it was kind of that thing of taking you to places, not only individually but corporately, and achieving things much bigger than yourself, or beyond anything that you thought you could do.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that God gave us so much, the gifts, the blessings that we have. And if people would just recognize the gifts and the blessings that we've been given, and the power internally that we've been given, the hope that we have for every day, the hope that we have for eternal life, we are blessed beyond measure, and most people just don't recognize it.
It's very, very true. Very, very true. Now, forgive me if you've already said this part and I kind of glossed over it or forgot. Did you go into the military? Was that before or after college?
I had started, and then went in, took a little break to go in, do basic, and I ended up real long AIT. I was in for about a year, going through electronics training and at lovely Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia. Did my basic training at Fort Jackson, right up the road. Now that was a unique experience. I didn't go through a regular basic training. We did what was called a HUD, a horizontal unit deployment. So what transpired, can I say HE double hockey sticks?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So it was welcome to hell every week. We had our original active duty drill sergeants when we started, and then what they did is rotated reserve and guard units through every week. And so you'd get a brand new, fresh set of drill sergeants with, more energy and more spitfire than, the regular ones, because they were out to prove something. So it was welcome to hell every 7 days. And we got smoked being physical training. We got in so many creative ways, different ones every week. And by the end, we were just our group was in such good shape from getting smoked a variety of different ways. We just you ended up with quite a sense of humor about the whole thing. You'd have your bunks ripped apart and your stuff thrown all over the place, week after week, waking up with people banging on trash can lids and everything else. It was quite a different experience. But then AIT, I'll tell you what, it's probably laid a really good foundation for my role with the church as a tech director, because we got into it. We were soldering circuit boards and doing all kinds of different things, learning from the basics up to advanced electronics. And it really served me well in my later career as a helicopter pilot and electronics warfare officer and the other things that I've done. So,
which really helps here because, we have kind of a duct tape budget. Really, I don't even know if we're duct tape. We're more like Scotch tape or masking tape. But anyway, and so we've had to be real creative through the years. This has been like Christmas morning, the studio and all these gadgets. It's just this is so new for us to have like nice stuff.
It was fun there at the beginning. It was like we're crating in box after box after box just to run the service, and so it's nice to be in a position where we have some really high quality stuff. And I think we'd probably thank Handyman Hal for some of that.
Oh, of course, the handyman just got the plan. Well, what about talk to me a little bit about the helicopter thing. That's like really cool. Like what kind of helicopter did you fly? And how long did it take to train for that?
Well, I've flown a variety of different helicopters. Everybody starts with what folks recognize on the news, those Bell Jet Rangers. Of course, we call them something else. But that's what you learn on. And it's quite funny. When you start, they take you out in this huge field with, big expanse area and keep you separated, obviously, because you don't know what you're doing. And at first they start you with hovering, and it's really funny because your instructor pilot, calm as a cucumber and sitting there and hardly moving, and then they give you one control at a time so that you get an idea of what it does in the helicopter. And it's kind of that, the way they describe it is kind of like trying to stand on a beach ball.
Man.
Because every time you put one control movement in, you got to put other control movements in. You're on all three axes, pitch, yaw, and it's so funny as you look at when we all started, because they give you the controls and you're wiping out the cockpit, your pedals, and it's funny when you get to the end, where you're comfortable. You're sitting there just dead as a rock, like he is, or he or she. And, it's really interesting that as we went through training, a lot of the folks, because we had both civilian and military instructors with our initial training. And it's funny, the ones that were civilian instructors, when the weather got bad and they had the option, people would call off. And I had the luxury and the blessing to get an old Vietnam era guy.
Wow.
And he would take us out in some of the crappiest weather. It was awful. So we thought, but we learned so much more about the aircraft. And for instance, we had one day where the winds were really high. I mean, they obviously had limits where they wouldn't allow us to go. But if we're in that high wind condition, he would put us out there and show us what it really meant to lose tail rotor effectiveness, where you could put the pedal to the floor and you still couldn't turn that direction because the wind was so high. And then you push the other one and it's like you're spinning around like a top. And so you really learned a lot about the aircraft, where some others may have book knowledge, but you have actual experience with it.
Which I imagine is important because, in times of combat, you don't get to choose weather conditions or
No, and you don't know when you may take some shrapnel, and you may not have the ability to get enough power out of it. So, learning how to take off and land, learning how to maneuver the aircraft. He put his feet out and blocked the pedals, and you had to figure out what you were going to do to move the aircraft around.
Wow.
And so you learn, when I talk about flying by the seat of your pants, it's learning to feel the pressure of the aircraft and how it's moving. And I learned so much from going out in those uncomfortable circumstances. When you're doing check rides, and that's where you would get checked for your competency, and you would go and be doing some of the most complex maneuvers in the helicopter. And that's when this guy was asking us emergency procedures that you had to wrote from the chapter, what you would do with the aircraft if this circuit breaker popped, or if this fire light went off, or if you got an engine chip light. And he would ask it at the most complex times. And it's kind of fun when you look back on that and you look at how Christ works in our lives. You're in situations where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't see a way out of this. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. And at the last moment, with just the right amount, you're pulled out of a situation, and it's God. Mm-hmm. You can't give anybody, you can't take credit yourself, you can't give credit to anybody else but God.
So true.
And I see, as they were putting us through some of those things, I mean, you never know when something's going to happen. I mean, you look at a helicopter and you're like, how the heck does this thing fly, But it's interesting how they would put us in those situations so that when it's actual combat as opposed to training, you've been through it before. It's not your first rodeo. Yeah. So,
and that's so good. And and again, just the reliance on the Holy Spirit and understanding that, just like you were talking about, I'm a big believer. You were equipped for what you had to do, and I believe in the same way. God equips who He calls.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And it's funny. You think of some of the things that you remember during your military career, and every military person that's gone through basic training, especially the Army folks, one of the things that you have to go through is the gas chamber, because you have all this equipment, but you rarely ever have to use it. But they want to make sure that everybody knows, because when you get the signal, gas, 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 you generally have 6-7 seconds to get that thing on before you're going to have serious damage. And you need to be confident that your equipment is going to work for you. And it's just the same way. I mean, you go in there and they make you take them off. So you're in there and everything's kind of okay. Well, it's, there's something going on, and the thing is keeping you safe. You're able to breathe, not like we are right now, but it's restricted a little bit, but you're not really choking or dying or anything. And then at the end, they make you take those things off to see what it was protecting you from. And I think there's a great, as you look at, what happens when we put on the armor of God every day, and how it protects us from different things. And if people have faith that he does have our back, that he is looking out for us, his plan is better than any plan that we have for ourselves, you get a little more confident in who you are as a child of God. You get a little more confident in the fact that he's got us. And I look at people that don't have that. I wonder how they get through the day. Yeah. I mean, how do you go to Walmart without Jesus? you know? So it just, I see a lot of unique parallels between the two.
I think even as Christians, oftentimes sometimes we get busy and get so wrapped up in the routine of life that we forget to put that armor on. We forget to have that time, and it's so incredibly important.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you were talking, I was wondering now, as you were a helicopter pilot, did you ever face combat? Were you ever in any kind of conflict?
Not officially, but actually, my helicopter was shot at twice.
Wow.
And hit twice. Once during flight school. We were a little farther advanced. Our instructor pilot was taking us out during night vision goggle training, and apparently we got too close to a farmer's pot field. And he opened up on a U.S. Army helicopter pilot, or a U.S. Army helicopter in southern Alabama. And he hit the helicopter. And
that explains. When you were saying that, I'm like, they had to be down south.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got a GPS. The instructor pilot immediately hit the button, which stores that 10-digit grid code where we were hit. And we kind of obviously flew away from where the fire came. And in a very short period of time, there were lots of lights and sirens coming down on that place. And to my understanding, that guy's still in prison. And this was back in the 90s.
Man.
Because he got, 3 counts of attempted murder. And this was a federal offense because of it being a U.S. Army helicopter that he shot. So I don't think he's getting out of jail anytime soon.
I had forgot. I think you had told that story before. I had forgotten about that. That's just unreal. I just can't even fathom that.
Yeah. The other time was we were out in the California desert just doing observations. We were carrying around DEA guys because at the time I was flying Chinooks, which are the big dual rotor helicopters. So you can carry a lot of people, and so they were out just doing exercises, and they were looking specifically for drug operations and those kind of things. And the guy opened up on us with the automatic weapon, came right up through the bubble. I mean, when you're doing 150 knots and something comes right up through the bubble and goes right over your shoulder, I mean, missed me maybe 18 inches. That's definitely a God thing, because a split second faster or slower, and I may not be here. And it was a major bust, and a lot of people went to jail over that one too. So, it's what the military does is extremely dangerous. People don't realize that. we did high altitude rescues up on Mount McKinley. We did forest firefighting. We did sling loads, moving cargo in different places. What the U.S. military does, regardless of branch, can get very, very dangerous.
And not just in combat. And so.
Yeah, training too.
Wow. Well, I'm sure people are watching, and definitely people that know you. Perhaps when you said that you used to jump out of airplanes, I'm sure that they know, because one of your nicknames is Big D. You have lost a lot of weight. Congratulations on that. Looking great. Looking better. You already look great. But I'm sure people are wondering, okay, Dennis Hubble, jumping out of airplanes. I got to hear about that.
Well, it's kind of fun, actually. I've never been afraid of heights, but I've never been that kind of adrenaline junkie, I guess, that some people are. And it was interesting. They teach you how to fall without hurting yourself, because jumping out of a military aircraft and jumping out of a civilian aircraft are completely different things. Civilians, you come down nice and slow. You can actually walk away from the landing, or walk into the landing, because you're coming down a little slower. They liken it to jumping out of the back of a pickup truck at about 35, 40 miles an hour. They want you to come down just slow enough so that you're not going to cripple yourself or hurt, kill yourself. But they don't want you hanging around up there and giving somebody, a target for a while. It's not like, playing that game at the fairgrounds where you're clink, 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 clink. You don't want them to have that many shots at you.
Wow.
So, you're on a static line for a lot of them, and you line up, and it's like a bunch of little lemmings, pip, 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 right out the door. Wow. And they want to make sure you do a 5-point landing. It's kind of like the rung on a rocking chair, where your feet and you kind of roll down your leg and kind of spin when you get down near the bottom, and that's that makes the landing a whole lot easier. But I did one. It was early in our jump school where I'd kind of forgotten I was just enjoying the view and forgot that the trees and houses were getting bigger around me. And I did a 3-point landing. My feet, my rear end, and the back of my head, and kind of knocked the wind out of me. And I don't think I made another jump where I wasn't paying attention ever again, because that's a whole lot more than I had bargained for.
So fascinating. And I mean, I could just imagine what you saw and what that was like. And
it's the first time you go out, it's an unreal experience. It really is something. And but you didn't get a whole lot of time to think about it because you weren't going out very high. And when you did the combat jumps, if that main chute didn't open up, there really wasn't time to pull your reserve because you're only going out, hundreds of feet off the ground. So that thing pops and you're on the ground like now.
Wow.
So it was really interesting to do some of that. And I think it gave me a different perspective when I was flying because both in airplanes and helicopters, they do paradrops. And so being on the controls when I've got people coming out the back gave me a little better perspective having jumped out the back. So it was fun. Also went to air assault school, learning about setting up sling loads. So again, same kind of thing, getting it from both perspectives on the ground and then, flying. I think that helped me a lot. Wow. So,
well, in your time in service, are there any relationships you develop, friendships that you had not only at that time, but are still active even today?
Oh, absolutely. I still have people that I talk to all the time. Matter of fact, technology is great because I having Zoom, having, access to social media. I'm still well connected with a lot of people that I served with, and had some friends that had gone up to Alaska, which was my last duty station, and they got to meet some of my friends that I was stationed with because they're still up there. So it was really nice to have that kind of connection.
Wow. And so, and I imagine too, I mean, just because what you went through, you know, because they talk about how I think anytime you go through something traumatic with someone, or you go through a high pressure situation with someone, there's always that connection. There's always that, something special there that you can get through a lot of things with that person because of going through that. So I imagine that, I guess that probably helped kind of strengthen the bond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you've shared an experience but did we die? It really creates a different feeling. And I remember my first interview coming out of the military, transitioning into the civilian world again. And it was so funny. I actually laughed at the interviewer because he obviously had never been in a service. He asked me, so how do you feel that you handle stress? This can be a stressful job. And I just laughed and I said, all right, let me give you a perspective. Imagine doing 170 miles an hour, 15 feet off the ground. You've got 25, 30, 18 to 20-year-olds that are very anxious, that have live ammunition and weapons in the back. You have 5 different radios squawking at you. You have aircraft survivability equipment telling you that you have radar pinging you from 2 different directions. Oh, and they just dropped an artillery shell so close to you that the dirt is coming down through your rotor system. Is that the kind of stress that you're talking about? And it's kind of funny. Unless you've been in those environments, you really don't know what stress is. Yeah. When we were going through survival school, and I'm a big guy, so they're trying to make assumptions based on what they're seeing with people to see how they can break you. And they put me in a hole for 3 days where every time I turned, my shoulders touched the walls, and there was a grate right over my head. And they opened a fire hose on me 3 times a day because they want you to understand what it's going to be like in a controlled environment if you were captured. Because as pilots, we frequently are some of the first to go behind enemy lines. And it provides you a unique perspective on who you are as a person, your relationship with God. And it just, until you've been in those situations, you don't get to learn a lot about who you are as a person, your strength and your relationship with God, and how much God's got you and is going to bring you through situations. So
no, that's very, very true. And yeah, I think you kind of touched on it. What was your transition from the military like? Because I know most people that know me know about this, but I just recently was in school for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And online school is very different because it's, you're taking a course that would typically be a 16-week course. You're taking it in 8 weeks. And by the way, I'm still a dad, still a pastor, still a husband, all of those things. And so it was just, it was doing a normal day that I typically would do, then going home and then being in books for hours upon hours. It took me a while, a couple months to kind of transition out of that. I mean, I would come home at night and I'd be real anxious because I should be doing something. I should be doing something. Like I might sit down to watch a television program with my wife, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be doing this, and I think it took me a while to where, oh, it's okay. I don't I don't have, I'm not supposed to be doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I guess in that kind of vein, what was the transition from the military like? Because, I mean, where you go from not only like you said, the stressful situations, but also just everything in the military is so programmed, and there's so much protocol and procedure and
structure
and structure and a plan, and then you go all of a sudden and there isn't one. It's what you make.
Yeah.
So.
Especially in aviation, where, I mean, you don't take a helicopter out and just go for a spin. I mean, there's a detailed pre-flight checklist that you go through. That you actually wear a thing on your leg that has the processes and procedures for your aircraft. You have a manual that's like 4 inches thick that tells you the exact startup, conditions, everything that you ever wanted to know about that helicopter. And it's so funny that the transition, there's so many people on the civilian side that just wing it. And that was one that was just, it kind of boggled me a little bit at first, that they just kind of come in and see what happens. And then the next piece that I think was the hardest for me was being on high performing teams like that in the military. Because, I mean, if everybody wasn't doing their job, I mean, it could be catastrophic. Coming into the civilian world and coming to the realization that everybody's got their own agenda. Everybody has their own reasons for being there. And just because you're in the same boat doesn't mean you're all rowing in the right direction. Yeah. And some people are actually drilling holes in the bottom, And
great analogy.
So it was really challenging to come to that realization that those things happen. It was obvious those things were happening, and there were no repercussions for people that were doing that. In the military, I mean, you either get on board or there are serious repercussions to what you were doing. I mean, for instance, in the first week I was out, I saw this guy down the street abusing his dog. And I was stunned that very little was done to that guy. In the civilian side, my neighbor was an MP, and they worked with the military dogs from time to time. And there's a huge difference between a war dog and an MP dog, the canine. But did you know if you kick or hit one of those, they're considered an officer?
Wow.
There was a guy.
I've never heard this.
There was a guy that was going down in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If you abused a military dog, I mean, 2 years immediately tacked on to whatever it is that you did for attacking that animal. That's not even heard of in civilian side. So getting used to some of those things that, there was an immediate repercussion. The funniest one, I think my friends used to give me such a hard time. When you're on a military post, if it says 25, you're doing 25. If it says 30, you're doing 30. You're not doing 31 or 32. And so, my driving style was compared to that of a grandmother when I got out. That was kind of funny.
That's great.
That was kind of funny.
And I think, too, one thing, I've noticed with you, and I had to kind of get used to it, but I think you see this a lot with guys in the military is, in the military, how things are explained, and they're just assuming you don't know. And so it could be the simplest of tasks, but you're going to take you're going to take me through it step by step. And I think at first I was kind of like, what? Why was he talking to me like that? But then understanding, like, no, it's just so ingrained in you.
There's certain things that you just can't turn. It's like embedded in you. My mom, it was so funny. I remember one of the first times that I'd come home after some training, and just the way that I walked through the house to the bathroom, how I was squaring off corners and things. Yeah, she just sat out there at the kitchen table just laughing at me. So yeah, it's weird, some of the stuff that gets ingrained in you. And I had a girlfriend recently. It was so funny. Every time I go into an establishment, because this is where I was trained, I scan the room. I can tell you who is potentially a threat, who is potentially carrying a weapon. I look for all the exits, and I look for a place. And I know it drives my friends crazy, because if they're already sat down, that's one thing. And then I'll feel really uncomfortable the whole time. But if we can sit in a place where I can have my back to a wall and see that people as they're entering and exiting, I feel a lot more comfortable.
Wow.
It just, I can't turn that off. It's just bizarre. And I've had the girlfriend, she said she is trying to talk to me when we were walking in a place. And, it was obvious what I was doing. And she just stopped until we got farther along. She goes, all right, you need to explain to me what you were doing as we were walking into the restaurant. And it just, certain things absolutely become ingrained in you.
Off. And I think kind of in one of our last points here, you really, there are some veterans that really struggle
absolutely
with that transition and never really make it. And I mean, you just see so many homeless veterans. You see so many that that go through that. You think that's kind of what it is? They just can't seem to. They just have a hard time turning the switch, or maybe
it goes a lot deeper than that, Benji. It really does.
Because I was going to talk about PTSD as well, and
PTSD
some of those things.
Is really, really a serious problem. I mean, I've obviously been through some things, seen some things that I hope most human beings never have to. PTSD affects everybody that's been in the military. If you've been deployed or done anything where you were involved in any type of conflict, even some of the humanitarian stuff that we do, the things that you see, can be really hard thing to take. Buddy, I'm a godparent for his kids. That everybody remember that movie Black Hawk Down?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty accurate depiction of what really happened. There are some differences. If you read the book, we can have a discussion about that. But he was in that unit, and I've met him, the guy that wrote the book, and we talked about some different things. And I've seen some things because, as helicopter pilots, frequently we're the first ones that can get to an emergency when maybe a medevac helicopter isn't available. And there are 22 service members, veterans a day, 22 a day, that are committing suicide because they just can't deal with the repercussions of what they've seen, what they've done. And the VA system, while it's gotten better over the last few years with some of the visible, news articles and things that have come out, and stories and lawsuits, but the veteran community is hurting. And even I didn't know that it affected me as much as it did when I went and saw Black Hawk Down for the first time, and knowing some of those people personally and having been in similar situations. I was dating a girl, and during some of the scenes, I didn't even realize, because I was squeezing her hand so hard, didn't even realize that I was doing that. And she's, hey, wow. Stop it. What? Yeah. You're going to break my hand. So it affects all of us a little bit. And I'd ask people to pray for them if they can contribute.
I was going to ask, what can we do?
Well, obviously pray for them. If you know somebody's hurting, get them some help. I know there's a stigma that, is still out there around mental health, which
I think
really
is changing. It's for the better. I think people are realizing just how it used to be. If you had a mental health issue, it was you were isolated. But I think now we're realizing everybody to some degree probably struggles with that a little bit.
Yes, and PTSD is one of those things that you really shouldn't be trying to address or handle on your own. Yeah. You've got to get professionals involved. Yeah. Don't feel like you're doing that service member a disservice by bringing that to somebody's attention. Yeah. It is serious. There is, we made the allusion to a light switch earlier. There is, in many cases, a light switch that goes off where they're a different person. And until they receive professional medical attention, that's not going to get fixed. There are certain things that will trigger that. And really, pray for them. If you see somebody that's having issues, get professionals involved that are equipped to deal with that. Don't try and handle it on your own. Because we, at the core of who we are as veterans and active military members, let's call a spade a spade. In most cases, we train killers. Yeah. You don't want to admit that, but that's what they train you to do. Wow. And if that light switch is turned on and you aren't one of those medical professionals that's been trained to deal with that, it could be a very dangerous situation. Absolutely. Very, very quickly and easily. And
again, we don't know, because I remember this past summer, I'm a dean at one of our camps, or through our denomination. I serve on the board for Discipleship Ministries, and we at our primary camp, which for the younger kids, we had a gentleman that was a counselor, and he came to me and he said, "Listen," he told me a little of his story. Apparently, what had happened was he and his unit or troop, I don't. Forgive me on the lingo part.
Yeah, I got
but anyway, they had encountered a like a landmine or something like that, and apparently some of them died or whatever. And he said he was very concerned about the fireworks, and he asked if he could be excused to his cabin because he said he said he just didn't want to go there mentally in front of the kids. And man, my heart just broke for him. And it's just because, again, that's something I would never think of, and have no, I just, I can't even comprehend it. Yeah. And, but an amazing guy, but it just broke my heart for him that, man, all these years later, and he's having to, deal with that.
Yeah. Well, think about the fight or flight mechanism. Yeah. In most situations, when something catastrophic is happening, and war is catastrophic, the vast majority of people do what? Run away. Yeah. They've trained these people to do exactly the opposite of what your body and your mind is telling you to do. Turn and run towards it. And that's a tough thing. And when you see something like he experienced where, they hit a landmine, and some of the very people that you spend your entire day with, that you've sacrificed next to, when they are killed or injured, that the basic human instinct is to stop and to care for those people in that situation. But that's not what you're required to do. You're required to assess and deal with that until some people can deal with those folks, and you're expected to move on and move past it. And that's just from a human perspective, from a Christian perspective, that's not what you're to do, and it's tough, and people struggle. I mean, they have nightmares, they have cold sweats, they have, instances like that, where those things start triggering different emotions and feelings and bringing you back to certain spots. So.
My grandfather, when he was still alive, he passed away. Goodness, it'll be, I think this year it'll be 8 years ago. But I believe when he was in his 80s, probably he served in World War II, and we're talking some 60-something years afterwards. And my grandmother told me a story that occasionally he would wake up in the middle of the night, terrified he'd had a dream, and he would go right back. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and he would have a dream, or a flashback, and he would just wake up terrified or whatever, and she would have to remind him, "Oh no, we're at your home, and you have children, and you have grandchildren, and we love you." And that just, again, I couldn't comprehend. I mean, all these years later, and yet that's still happening. I mean, again, like you said, I think it's just so important that we show compassion, and that we really pray and be grateful for those that serve, because we have no idea. Many of them don't talk about it or don't tell. I mean, we have no idea what they've been through.
Correct, and a lot of vets really don't. We might share around each other, but most people have never been through that, don't understand it, and frankly, you don't want to traumatize your family members the way that you were. And especially with what's going on in our country right now, with a lot of the news and propaganda and things that are coming out, it's particularly important to pray for and to be supportive of your veterans, because they've had to make so many decisions to sacrifice for their families, for their loved ones, and families too. Because if you got a family member that's in the military, guess what? You're serving too. Wow. And it affects you guys. And a lot of veterans in all branches are questioning their service, and was it for the right principle, and were we doing the right thing? Or, there are a lot of places around the world that think, hey, the Americans aren't the ones saving them. The Americans are part of the problem. Yeah. And as a veteran, when you had blood, sweat, and tears for years and years of your life, there's a whole lot going on in people's heads as to whether or not we were the good guys or the bad guys. Wow. And so pray for those people.
Absolutely.
Pray for me, because I go through the same stuff. It's funny how so many people enter the military that have no faith. They come from different backgrounds. Maybe they weren't even ever presented the gospel before. But I'll tell you what, you spend some time in a foxhole or a hasty position, and you're getting shot at, or you're in a really nasty environment where you're going and trying to help and provide humanitarian aid. And I guarantee you there are a lot of people that find God in a foxhole.
Wow. Absolutely. And I just feel led to say this. If you're watching today and what we're talking about is you, or you have a family member or a friend, and they really, they need help, we're going to put our contact information on the screen. We would love to help you. Not necessarily that maybe we could provide anything, but maybe point you in the right direction. There are things out there. I know at our church, the Refuge churches as a whole, we have some veterans. We're very passionate about this, and I know that we're trying to get some counseling services provided for those with PTSD. That's still kind of in the works. But if we could help you in any way, we would love to do that. Because again, I'm a big believer you're not alone.
Yeah.
And again, we have some guys that have served, and I know that they would love to help you. So please let us know.
Yeah, happy to do that. Got some great connections in the veteran community, and just don't go without getting some kind of help.
Please, yeah, please. We don't want you to be one of those numbers or
Amen.
statistics. We
Amen.
want you to be one of those overcomers and one of those with a testimony. Well, listen, brother, as we close here, I would ask you, I like to do this when we close, if maybe you would just take a minute and pray.
Sure, happy to.
Pray for our country, pray for our veterans, pray for those serving now, and you know, just as an encouragement, because again, perhaps somebody's watching today and they're what we're talking about, and they really have needed this. So would you do that, please?
Sure, happy to. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to sit down with Benji today to talk about my experience in the service. I ask you, Lord, to be with all those service members, the men, the women, that sacrificed and gave of themselves to protect our way of life, our country. There've only been a couple of folks in my memory that have given their life for their friends. First and foremost, Jesus Christ, and
Amen.
then our military service members. And it's an honor to have served and a blessing. And I thank you for bringing me safe through it. And Lord, I'd ask you to be there for those service members and their families that have gone through this and haven't come through as unscathed as I have. Lord, I ask you to be with them. Let them know that you're with them, that you're strengthening them, that you love them, forgive them for what they've done or what they've seen. Because frequently in this environment, we have to do things that are absolutely against what you teach us to do. We ask you, Lord, to help those folks find a safe place where they can get the help that they need. We ask you, Lord, to those that are contemplating suicide, let them know that they don't need to take a temporary situation and apply what they think is a permanent fix to it, that you love them and that you'll love them through this. We ask you, Lord, for our little church, the Refuge here in Murrells Inlet and all our campuses, that we are truly a refuge for folks that are hurting, that they can come, they can feel safe, and that they'll get the help and assistance that they need. We thank you, Lord, for your sacrifice, for your blood, your forgiveness, your grace.
Yes.
And I look forward, Lord, to a time when we can meet you and kneel before you and hopefully hear those words, well done, faithful, good and faithful servant. We ask you, Lord, to be with us, keep us safe. Help us to remember to put on the armor of God each and every day when we go out. The complete armor, keep us safe from those principles and powers that would do us and our families harm. And we ask you, Lord, to continue to bless us on our journey while we walk here in the world but not become of it. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Brother, thank you, man. I love you.
Love you too.
And I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Happy Memorial Day to you.
Well, Memorial Day, let's make sure everybody gets this right. Memorial Day
Set me
is
straight now.
the one for those service members who have passed.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for that. My holiday comes later from Veterans Day.
Veterans Day. But
yeah, these are the people that have passed.
Yeah, but we still
in the service of the
celebrate.
country. So
to me, man, I still celebrate and honor you.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. But this one's for those that have passed, those folks.
All right. Well, thank you for getting me right on that. But it is Memorial Day. This is our Memorial Day week. And as I always say, I hope that you remember those that have passed and those families, but also enjoy you a hamburger and shoot you some fireworks and eat some watermelon and do those great American things that we love to do on that week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In closing, again, this program is our gift to you. We hope that you enjoy it. Please, if you would like to give, it's not cheap. You don't have to. There's no obligation. But if you would like to give, please text Refuge MI to 77977. It's safe and secure. Hit the other tab. Put Living Life Between Sundays, and we'll make sure that those monies go towards this program, and it will help us to continue to reach people literally all over the world. Go to YouTube, Refuge TV, like, subscribe, share.
Yes.
Help us build this audience, get the word out there, and again, so we can continue to make an impact. And in closing, I want to say this. Living Life Between Sundays is where living your Christian life is not just an event. It's not just a day. It's living life between Sundays. Hey, God bless you. Happy Memorial Day. We'll see you next time. God bless.